Let's start and see what you're saying on Twitter. Tom Kibaraza says Mzee Moi was a true lover of education. He gave free milk, built many schools, and even gave them buses. He used to preside over all university graduations in the country, that is Kenya.
Okay, Steve, you're saying, were it not his initiatives in education, then likely his inheritors in the position could have not thought otherwise better in enhancing education. Maziwa ya Nyayo wasn't a legacy to talk about since it appeared as foundation for corruption.
Oh, wow. Okay. You call yourself KOT loyals. You say, what was the literacy rate between 1978 and 2002? And what is the literacy rate currently? Yeah. I don't think Moi should be praised for improving education.
All right. Governor 254, you are saying it was also during Moi's reign that Commission of Higher Education came to be. Moi ordered that the doubling in the number of students admitted through the Joint Admissions Board. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see what you're saying on 22422. Just text us your name and where you're texting from, and we'll sample some of them during this broadcast. Mutembe says, I have been in the 844 system of education. It is a system that made you know something about everything. In primary, we were taught cooking, singing, and even craft, among others. In secondary, a combination of sciences, arts, languages, and maths was a great experience. In the university, it was an experience of its kind. 844 products are masters in the present world. It was one of the best things President Moi brought.
Okay, still on SMS, tell us your name and where you're watching from. Abel from Eldoret, you're saying, the late former President Moi did much for the education sector. The only problem was the best performers were glorified while not too bright guys were thrown away.
All right. You don't leave a name or where you're texting from, but you say, I was in high school in the 1980s. This Fimbo ya Nyayo had education in mind as priority. You cannot compare heavily subsidized high-quality education that time to today's money for education certificates. His only failure was not to force those who dropped out. He was a mobilizer encouraging parents to school Harambee, and his feeding program encouraged many. In fact, in tertiary, I studied for free. Moi never let any Kenyan die of hunger.
Interesting comments there.
Wow. So now we shift gears to a different kind of conversation. Safety in schools. And also, Kaburu, you wanted to equate this to equity and inclusion. But first, I want to start with Echesa, because you've been to Kakamega Primary School. Did you see anything that could be termed as having not been appropriate at the time?
Trevor, I have been to Kakamega Primary School. It's actually a school at home. And for the second time, I want to say pole to the parents who lost their children and wish quick recovery to those in hospital. Kakamega Primary School has a population of 3,000 students.
3,000? 3,000
students. Whether Magoha calls to confirm or deny, that one I can tell you for a fact, that counter-check the records at school, 3,000 students against 73 teachers employed by teacher service.
And this you're sure of it?
Yes, I'm sure of.
So 3,000 students, 73
against 73 teachers. Okay, Kakamega Primary, in a week, has 3 masters on duty, the people we call MODs. I may not be sure with the size of the land on which Kakamega Primary sits, but it is not the kind of land to accommodate 3,000 learners. And where the problem is, or where the gaps are, you have only 3 masters on duty to look after 3,000 learners. That simply translates to 1 teacher for every 3,000 learners.
1,000 learners.
1,000 learners. And the essence of a master on duty is to keep an eye over learners. Not just in terms of discipline, not just in terms of compliance to school rules and regulations, but also in terms of their safety. Remember, in a primary school, we have learners who are not completely formed. They are children undergoing formation. Some of them, like in class 4-5, are 12, 11 years. They do not have a clear mind to do what is right and what is wrong. So they require close watch, something that is not happening just in Kakamega Primary, but in most of our primary schools. That the number of students is higher compared to the number of teachers who are supposed to talk to.
Significantly higher, not just higher. Significantly higher.
And secondly, when you look at the basic education regulations of 2015, Regulation 64 provides for the size of a class. It says that a class in primary school should be 7 meters by 8 meters and should have at most 50 students. With that kind of population and strained facilities at Kakamega Primary, you'll get that a class has about 78 and 80 students. A class that is supposed to accommodate 50 students. In case of a scare or a stampede, what happens? And what happened at Kakamega Primary was something that every person of reasonable sense could have foreseen. How many times have we been in town? You get people running, you don't ask, you just begin to run. Any direction. Because you don't know why people are running. Because we have danger. So what goes on, what happened at Kakamega School, we are reliably told there was a stampede. At least that one, there's no dispute there was a stampede.
The cause of it is what is still unknown.
The cause is not known. But whatever the cause, if you walk into a stampede, you will run. Because you will not have time to ask what is happening.
Let me bring in Amos and Sifuna. Here's the thing. The education system or the education sector in Kenya is one of the most heavily funded sectors that we have, even within our budgets. Infrastructure still continues to be a problem in this country. So clearly, money is not, throwing money towards infrastructure doesn't seem to be the answer. And how does corruption play into this? Because the funding is there, money is there, students are going to school, teachers are available, but infrastructure is still poor.
First of all, condolences to the families that lost their very young children. I've always said that it's not right for any parent to go and collect a corpse from the school. It is the most devastating thing. I left my daughter asleep this morning. The worst I can hear is that she had a little incident. Right. So it's very painful for any parent. But I also want to tell you something interesting. Which parents take their children to Kakamega Primary? For your information, Kakamega Primary is the school of the future. Why? This country, for us to plan our education, we will not afford to have schools that have 200 children, 300 children. Take a country like China, 1.4 billion people. If these people decided to take a bath every single day, how many liters of water do you need? If these people go to the toilet, how many liters of water do they flush on any single day? We must be bold to think about building for scale. So we cannot afford a situation where we are putting up schools for 200 children, for 300 children. And that's why I'm saying that schools such as Kakamega Primary, Moi DB Bungoma, Moi Primary Bungoma, DEB, Olympic Primary, Machakos Primary, these are the schools of the future with the large numbers. So we ought to ask ourselves, how do you design? How do you develop? How do you manage such schools? Because the challenge is that as these numbers swell, we do not have commensurate mechanisms of how to manage this numbers.
Yet we have
number
money
one.
funding.
Number two, on the issue of money,
yes,
the amount of money that goes towards infrastructure is very little, to be very sincere. It's extremely little. If you look at, for instance, what the ministry was getting this year, it should be less than 4 billion. Now, 4 billion can basically not put up classrooms. I'll give you for a fact, those of us who interact with the CBC, and what we know for it to work. For CBC to work by the, whether even we reform or we don't reform, I've said this several, and I have to repeat it now. In the year 2030, this country will have 24 million children in the school system. What does it mean in terms of numbers? It means that we need about 600,000 classrooms. Currently, we only have about 350,000 classrooms, which means we already have a deficit. Forget about the ones that are not even structurally sound. If we put all of them together, including those mad structures, they are 250,000. Yet we have, they are 350. So we have another deficit of 250. And so for us to construct the classrooms that respond to what the regulations say, we need not less than 650 billion Kenya shillings to pump into infrastructure alone.
So are you saying
yet this year alone, we have only received 3.5 billion.
So you're saying
we have resources, but
yes,
no, the problem is that what we have is we have resources, but highly spread thin. It's like you have 10,000, but what do you want to do with the 10,000? You want to buy a car? You want to buy a house? You can't do all those things. So you have to say that if I have 10,000, what is the transport measure that I need to take? I'll take a matatu. Can I put up my own house? No, I can rent a house. So it's us looking at the resources that we have. Then we redesign them in a way that is going to serve us. And one of the ways which you must be very bold to do is to reconfigure the relationship between the private and the public sector. Because the kind of relationship that we have in this city is completely adversarial. That's why even in this city we don't have schools. Areas which require schools don't have them. We know for a fact that children cannot cross a tarmac road to go to a school. Now walk to Westlands and see for yourself. There is Westlands Primary, there is Bora Primary, there is Muguga Green. Across the road where some of us work, there is no single school. It's a problem of planning.
Yeah. Right.
So it is not just about shortage, but also the planning of the resources that you have. Yeah. So Kakamega's situation is something that must really open us to begin. And the last thing on just that. Even when we talk of infrastructure, we must fault the entire built environment in this country. And the built environment in this country constitutes of architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and constructors.
Here's the thing.
And there is also the issue around corruption, because
Yes, I was coming to
you
that.
have got these structures which are approved by the county government,
Yes.
who approved a school that had got a very, very small staircase. It had no rails where children can use ramps. This just requires common sense. But someone probably could have been given 3,000 shillings, approves a structure that is not fit for human purpose, and people keep quiet because this is a school which is attended by the who is who in Kakamega because it performs well, and people therefore choose to keep quiet on anything wrong that is happening in this country.
Let's talk about that, Sifuna. How corruption is costing us the lives of our children, from Kakamega to the Precious Talent School, etc.
Yeah, and Kaburu's sentiments are quite in order. I also want to join Kenyans in condoling the lives of 14. In fact, as the flag goes half-mast for the late president, it should also be included of the 14 angels that have lost their lives so prematurely. It is a sad situation, Zinzi and my friend Trevor, that we are actually looking at these things happen. When I was in school, and I also remember you know that there was a robust quality assurance team.
Inspectorate.
Inspectorate. That name was replaced with the
quality assurance.
Yeah, because it was so dictatorial.
Yeah.
But the team was mandated to actually visit schools. They could come. And I remember in one of my primary school, we were forced to, the school closed for 3 days because the latrines were not functional and all that. These days, I'm telling you, Cindy, what is happening is we have assumed a situation where it is man for himself and God. And as teachers, we cannot actually just look at this situation and rubbish it off. Contingent measures, such as ensuring that, one, the country or the Ministry of Education ensures that teachers are actually employed. As we speak, the deficit of teachers in this country stands with over 100,000 teachers. Yeah. So the ratio that you are talking about, the numbers have swollen. Teachers are the same. Teachers are retiring, others are leaving by natural attrition, and I'm telling you, unless Teacher Service Commission actually takes this as a time bomb, the number of teachers exiting the service is very alarming. Yeah. But we, even as teachers, whose children have been placed under our care, you know, when you are trained as a teacher, Zinzi, you don't just go there to teach science, mathematics. You also ensure that the children that have been placed under your care, we have measures that ensures that they are guaranteed. So,
Sifuna, as a teacher then,
yes,
knowing that, why are we not seeing teachers being as vocal on infrastructure, especially given what's been happening in the past few months?
They have
compared to how the teachers are very vocal when it comes to their salaries, whether it is through COTU, CUPET, NAT, etc. Why are we not seeing the same sort of energy when it comes to standing up about the infrastructure?
I think there I will have to just advise you, when we are agitating, or when teachers are actually agitating, or when unions are agitating they agitate for what we call terms of service and working conditions, and that will include hiring of more teachers, so that even the workload, I'm telling you, the Kenyan teacher is highly overburdened.
Exactly.
But what is going to solve some of these situations, cases or scenarios, ugly scenarios we are seeing in Kakamega? There is this idea of civic education. Our children needs to be educated, even with the little numbers that we have. You remember when you were in school, we had things such as fire drills. Why can't the government also ensure that they also partner even with the private sector to ensure that our kids at school are taught on live survival tactics such as a fire drill. You go to any school and you ask those pupils, do you know of a fire drill?
They have no
Where
idea.
is your assembly point in case of any eventuality? There is none.
So Sifuna, why are teachers not being as vocal on infrastructure? Because of their lives are also at
no,
risk when they're in those classes.
there's
The
a
problem
direct
is
answer
why
to that. There is a direct answer to that. And the issue is we have to confront the legal issues over here. The schools in this country are owned by the Ministry of Education. The people who supply teachers are the Teacher Service Commission. So there is no forum through which the teachers can go to negotiate with the Ministry of Education. That is a structurally design issue around how our laws
They have
are
to be
made.
represented.
And so, even when you look at going back to the same ministry, it has never been committed in terms of developing infrastructure. The infrastructure in this country has been left to be the responsibility of parents.
But
So unless parents put in resources to construct a school, there's nothing that will happen. So there's only so much which teachers can do. And I agree with Otoa that our teachers are doing a lot. But
And
we really have to rethink of what is school safety from all the perspectives.
The
The
perspective.
six
Private
perspectives.
partnership
You
program and
mentioned
all
6
that.
perspectives when
Yes.
come to that because
Yes.
we're also looking for solutions. Yes, yes.
What I wanted to contribute to this is this, and to answer my sister. Teachers are not vocal about infrastructure in schools because it is not part of their terms of reference. They are employed.
But
and
your life is
given-
at risk.
Yes, and I'll explain to you shortly why they are silent. I know of a teacher who was transferred for questioning how a building was being constructed in school. Because that in teaching amounts to insubordination. You want to inspect how your principal is overseeing the construction of a school. That is insubordination of a highest order. And teachers have even been transferred for dressing like a principal. So our teachers,
Or buying a car.
or even owning a suit, our teachers are a frustrated lot
In some cases.
in some cases. And what is happening in terms of safety is what we are calling institutional failure.
Yes.
The Ministry of Education has failed. Teacher Service Commission has failed. The boards of management have failed. How has the Ministry of Education failed? What the CS did not mention, unfortunately, is that in this country, we have such a thing as Safety Standards Manual of 2008, which is supposed to provide a policy guideline on how to secure the safety of learners. 12 years down the line, this policy document that was developed by Professor Sam Ongeri has not been implemented. Part of the requirements of that policy guideline is that every school should have a safety management subcommittee chaired by the chairman of the board, and the secretary is the head teacher, plus one teacher on a staff who is in charge of safety.
And even students.
And even students.
has
I
to
can
sit
tell
on
you
it.
that less than 100 schools in this country have such committees.
And I have an example of a school I'll give. If you want to talk about safety in this country, a public primary school that is a model school. It is in
That is
existence.
how the ministry has failed. The ministry is not speaking about the implementation of the Safety Standards Manual of 2008. It is silent about it. How has Teacher Service Commission failed? When we talk about corruption, we don't just focus on contractors. We don't just focus on
the money
schools.
aspect.
We also focus on Teacher Service Commission. You may not be aware that teachers in primary schools are not employed directly to individual schools as it happens in secondary schools. You know, for secondary schools, they declare vacancies in individual schools, and the schools carry out interviews and pick their best. At a primary level, teachers are employed at the sub-county level, and they are posted to individual schools. And even at such a lower level, it is unfortunate that head teachers have to scramble for teachers who have been employed so that they are sent to their schools. So you will get that even though we have a shortage of teachers in almost all schools, some schools are severely understaffed. There is no even distribution of teachers who are retained even in that scarcity.
But we have teachers who are unemployed.
And the teachers who are unemployed are more than teachers who are
200.
employed.
The irony of that.
The irony of that, the government is just reluctant in terms of funding and so forth
Why?
and so on.
Even on employment. It's something as
It's
simple
not,
as
to
employment.
them is not a priority. They would rather invest elsewhere. than
I
employ
don't think
teachers.
so. I don't think so.
And how has the school boards failed? The school boards are actually in charge of safety. and they are supposed to provide guidelines on how to secure learners. The school boards are agents of the Cabinet Secretary for Education. They're actually on the ground to advise the County Education Board and the Ministry of Education on safety needs, including infrastructure. Our boards of management are ill-equipped to carry out this duty. Most of our boards of management are not trained, are people who were brought on board either because they go to a particular church and the sponsor has been requested to give names, or they are politically aligned to a particular leader and their names have been recommended. So the management of public schools is at risk.
Okay. But just to add on the accusatory organs, I will say that the Kenyan parents, to add on the long list that my brother Echesa has said, when I was coming here, and because I wanted to be here on time, I left my house during the ungodly hour of the morning. Okay. And I'm telling you, Trevor, what I've witnessed on the road is young pupils with heavy bags standing on the road so precariously, waiting for those school buses. If you look at some of those school buses, they are so much in very precarious conditions. The role of the parent is not just to wake up, you are going to hustle in Gikomba, and you are leaving your son or your daughter at that tender age to be on his or her devices. Let also the Kenyan parents know that we need to complement and synergize our effort in ensuring that a good parent, and I know since here could be a parent.
No.
Why? What?
all right, I'll let it go.
You ensure that you work right on time. Deliver your daughter in school. Yes, I know. Deliver your son or daughter in school, then come to your place of work. It ensures that you, even as you, wherever you will be and working during the day, you are also very comfortable that my child is well at school.
Okay.
Yes, I want to ask
last statement.
How much sodium methyl sulfite
should be complex?
It should be used. Yes, should be used to preserve food.
I don't know.
You have no answer. So it is the same thing when we take the responsibility of safety to parents. The issue is we have got agencies that have a responsibility, and that is why the very definition of a state is that we hand over, it has monopoly of violence. So that, let me finish, so that it takes over the responsibility of stewardship over everyone. I can assure you, and my brother is over here, he's talked about the issue of the safety policy. We have no policy in Kenya as far as safety is concerned. What we have is a document produced by the Church World Service, which the ministry quickly picked and called it a policy. This thing cannot be implemented. Because one, in terms of resources, it is impossible. Number two, in terms of capacity, it is impossible. So we have to hold the Minister of Education to account. And that's why, unfortunately, the Teacher Service Commission was forced to do what it did last week. What did it do? It just to withdraw their employees from northeastern Kenya because the Teacher Service Commission cannot provide security. So if it keeps on complaining that our teachers are being murdered and the line ministry which should be providing security is not providing, what do you do? And that's why I agree with him that the Teacher Service Commission should say, we are not going to let our teachers to teach in schools that are not safe. If structures are falling off, we are going to withdraw our teachers. So that it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Education. The Constitution is very clear, Article 53. Every child has a right to free and compulsory basic education, which is put in the Basic Education Act. Let me just finish in the Basic Education Act.
You know, he didn't ask me a question.
12 years.
Let
the Ministry of Education do its work.
Is your daughter a day schooler?
Yes, my daughter is a day schooler. But we cannot take this huge responsibility. Yes, let me finish. We cannot take this huge responsibility and put on parents. There is so much which parents don't know. They can also be brought in the fore. But how will parents know that this structure is not,
the government will
this
not
building is not structurally
sound?
Can you know how many pillars are required to put up this building? You wouldn't be able to know. So these are only things which can be done by that officer who approves the building should be held accountable. What should I do when I've taken my child to school?
No, what I'm saying is this.
What should parents have done to stop the stampede?
Some kind of logic.
It is unfair to parents sometimes when we blame them.
Let me put some logic to my brother. When the school session is over at 5 p.m., and you have maybe your son or daughter is not under a school bus program,
Yeah.
it is now your responsibility. The
So I
government,
should leave
the
Westlands,
state has-
come to Kilimani
Yes,
to
you
pick my
must
daughter to
have
take her to where I
you
live.
must
It is
have
practically
plan.
impossible. That's what
When you
we're
give birth,
All right, gentlemen.
It's unfair.
when you
Gentlemen,
give birth, you
Giving
don't give
birth sometimes
and
is not a
relegate
choice.
to the
Sometimes
state.
it's not a choice. It happens.
Gentlemen,
It
we
happens
have to
even
take
when
a
you
break.
don't
All
want
right,
to.
all right, calm down, calm down. All right,
Let
Let's
the
all right.
follow
state
their work.
All right.
do the right thing.
That is
Yeah.
the
Let the
Echesa's
state
point
All right.
is a
do
fantastic note.
the right
That's
thing.
where we leave it for
Yes,
now.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Echesa.
Thank you
Yes.
so much for making time. Amos Kaburu, Program Manager, People's Action for Learning. Otoa Sifuna, teacher by profession, and Kennedy Echesa, lawyer and education expert as well. This has been a fiery discussion on the education sector. Let's see what you're saying online. We have a lot of your feedback coming through. We'll sample just a few of them because we've really run out of time. Let's see. You don't say where you're texting from or your name, but you say, with the lack of recognition of private schools' contribution on learning in Kenya and the resultant overcrowding of public schools, it takes less than common sense to organize leaving schools in 3 batches. Playgroup to grade 3 by 3 p.m., class 4 to 6, 4 p.m., 7 to 8, 5 p.m. Even our places of work still has the craze of 8 to 5. Those who sacrifice 30 minutes at lunch and leave at 4:30 are having it very easy. That's a very interesting perspective.
And you know, in Nairobi, 30 minutes is
You
a
could
lot
actually
in traffic.
spread out
Oh,
the
yeah.
living time of those pupils instead of just everyone living at the same time.
Or perhaps
Yeah.
maybe just, you know, how long you stay in school doesn't mean
Doesn't mean you're
doesn't
that productive.
qualify. Yeah, Lazaro, you say children's safety in all our learning institutions should be a matter of national concerns. What has been witnessed across the nation should be a wake-up call in this era of unpredicted terrorism.
All right. Shonko Andrew says the biggest question that we asked each day is why are we so reactive instead of being proactive? Must something happen so that measures are put in place?
Good question right there.
That's a good question. And to Shonko, the ardent view of Daybreak. Thank you so much for watching. Next up is some workout, yes? And Zinzi is not going to be working out, in case you're wondering. Yeah, ngoja chef Ali.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you in a bit.